Good morning everyone, welcome to my channel. Okay, the next series that we're going to work through is all about making some Christmas decorations for my Christmas tree. I try and do it every year, doesn't always happen, but this year I'm determined to make a few different pieces. Now I'm going to be using different patterns from different designers, plus some patterns that I've created for you as well. Now, first of all, little bird. There's going to be three, and I'll show you two fingers. There's going to be three designs that we're going to create this year. Little bird. Now, little bird is a combination of a few different designers that have sort of just, I've cited them. It's been rolling around in my head, and I really wanted to sort of put my spin on it all. Now, let's start at the beginning with the little bird. Now, Rachel from Roxy Creations did a video making a wreath with a little bird that sat in it. The video is linked below, some time ago. And she got the pattern for free from a little tutorial online from the designer Charlotte Lyons. Now, her Instagram page is Wren Studios. She has an Etsy store which has all sorts of fantastic patterns, little stitcheries and projects as well. Her website, when you go onto her website, you will be able to scroll through all of the blogs that she puts out, and in amongst it, this little style of bird is used in quite a few projects. But the project that caught Rachel's eye was a wreath that you wrap with random items like lace and trims and floral elements, and then the little bird nestled in that wreath. Well, that little bird and that video has just been in my head for so long, and I've made a version of that little bird that I've then turned into a Christmas decoration that I can hang on my tree using some antique laces and some treasures that I just wanted to make sure they were with me forever. For example, this piece of tatting. Okay, so my first project is going to be the little bird. These are the pattern pieces that Charlotte provides. So really simple. We've got the body, we're going to cut two of them. The wing, I cut 4 of these on my little bird because I wanted a little bit of structure because my little guy was hanging, so they needed to stand. You could probably cut 2 instead of doubling those, and it would be okay if your felt was quite stiff, and I'm going to use a felt. The tail is just a tricky little tail, 2 pieces, cut 1 of each. We're going to cut down there. That makes that tail separate and get all floppy like so. That's it there. Then there's an extra piece that's just stitched in as a random extra feather. Well, I cut 2 of this guy, even though I say 1 on there, but it was actually 2 because as I constructed my little bird, because he's 3D, I ended up putting another portion of that tail feather on the other side of him. Okay, so that's the pattern pieces, and that's where I got the pattern from, and Rachel does a video of her version of the bird on a wreath, so that's definitely worth going and checking out. The wreath as well is really tricky, so not hard as in clever, so go and check that out. Then in amongst all of that, along came this pattern for me from Lisa from Forage by Lisa Matic, and it's a series of birds being slow stitched into a quilt. Now, if you don't own this pattern, I'd stress to you, go out and grab it because it is just so handy. I haven't yet made the quilt, but little birds are just handy to have, and you get so many different little bird options. Heaps of them, different shapes. Now, these alone could be made into heaps of different Christmas decorations because in the back, Lisa gives you all the pieces you need to make your birds for this project. Well, there's no reason why you can't use these and make them into a 3D bird. So just a suggestion, but I think this pattern would be a lovely asset to have on your in your bookcase, because I just seem to keep going back to it for so many different projects. Hopefully one day I'll actually do this project, but hasn't happened yet. But the little bird has popped up in my journals of stitchery so many times. So yeah, if you want a collection of birds for lots of projects, highly recommend the pattern Alfred. Head over to Lisa Mattock's website and you will find that. So I will pop that to one side. The details will be in the description below. So that's Little Bird. Now, earlier in the year, I did a series of videos called Scrappy Elements. Now, in that series, I did around for Easter these two bunnies and the little ones, and embellish them with all my scrappy bits and pop them onto packaging for Easter gifts. So Bunny is back and we're going to use him for Christmas this time. So this pattern is in my Etsy store. If you don't have it already and you'd like it, the link will be below. Now what I'm doing this time, instead of making a flat rabbit out of one piece of felt, we're going to cut out two rabbits and stitch them together, the same principle as the little bird, and then embellish him. So he is going on my Christmas tree, and I just use all sorts of trims and bits of lace. There's so many bits and pieces left in my bucket from the season of stitching this year that it was pretty easy just to stay in my scrap bucket. And this is the running rabbit. So different design, and then I add a little bling because it's the Christmas tree. He can certainly handle a little bit of bling. And the only thing really different I did from this fellow is made him double and attached something to hang him from. So you'll see I've done very neutral colours because my Christmas tree is champagne gold with a hint of that Tiffany blue. Sometimes I don't put the blue on the tree and I just leave it as champagne tones and gold with a little bit of silver. So it's a very neutral sort of Christmas tree colour scheme. So then when I make bits and pieces, they're usually in these tones so that they just pop onto the tree and blend in with the whole, the look, so to speak. So that's the second little project we're going to make. Now the third project is a new pattern that's going into my Etsy store, and it makes a little birdhouse. So what I've made is a basic template that we're going to cut out and then embellish it, form it up, and then that's just a little birdhouse that can pop into my Christmas tree. I've left the roof off, the first one, because I just wanted to, you know, have access to the construction side of things so that you could see, you know, where we're heading. And it's so simple. Now, the embellishing of it is the same principle as the rabbits. It's just a case of create your template and then add all your fabrics, do a little bit of slow stitching. I had a little, what do they call them? A cotton reel. They're like, that's not an actual cotton reel. It's like an embellishment in the craft section of the $2 shops. You sometimes see these types of little things. I may have even picked it up at a craft fair. So they've been rolling around for years in my supplies. So when I started making this little guy, I thought that's a perfect little perch that a bird would sit on. Maybe I'm overthinking all of this, but I thought it was cute. I then used just scraps of lace from doilies. So I've just got so much of this type of thing around. So it was just cladding the little house, if we're going to use building terms, with little elements of lace just glued and stitched into position. So it's super, super easy. It's a great little project. The other thing is I've got some friends that are starting to explore this whole world of slow stitch. So what I plan to do is make up some little Christmas gifts with all these bits and pieces in a little cellophane bag with the pattern and a few little instructions and, you know, let them go. So that's a lovely little gift for someone who's starting to explore the world that we're all in, this stitching, slow stitch environment. So, yeah, so that's the plan, guys. So I'd love it if you joined me, and if you did decide to make some of these little elements. The birdhouse is in my Etsy store, the rabbits are in my Etsy store, but the bird, this little guy, you'll find him in Charlotte's blogs, and it's a free pattern. It was a free online pattern. You will find in the description below the link where Rachel has a play with that whole little project where she makes the wreath and positions the little bird. My little bird's a little bit different because I sort of had to think more about him being a Christmas decoration, and he was 3D, so, and then I just started embellishing. But if you were looking for a fantastic collection of birds, and you maybe just want to make a heap of birds for your Christmas tree and not worry about rabbits, this would be an awesome addition to your to your bookcase, because boy, there's potential there, heaps of potential. Okay, let's start at the beginning. Let's get started on this. I'm going to put all of our bits and bobs away. Now, I'm going to show you the fabric that I'm going to use. This is a felt, but it's very soft. It's not like that craft felt that you would pick up in a sheet, maybe the size of an A4 letter. That's very stiff. It has a lot of glue in it to help it create a bit of a structure about itself. That's not what I'm using. I went to my local Spotlight and I just bought felt by the meter, and you'll find that it's a lot softer. A lot of people use this within quilts and general padding for projects that want a little bit of padding. So by the meter, it's so much more economical, and it's a lovely product because it's soft. So if you are out shopping, just scrunch it a little bit, and if it feels soft like a blanket, that's what you want. You can use craft felt, don't get me wrong, but I find that sliding my needle through it all the time, it gets a little bit hard on my fingers. It's sort of, I'm sort of always looking for ways to keep my fingers sort of not getting so tired from all of this embroidery that I do. So having substrates and fabrics that, I'm just going to turn my phone off, it's binging away here. Substrates that I can work with comfortably that don't hurt me is, you know, just a bonus. So let's get started. I'm sort of going to be working on all of them at once, I think. I was going to do them separate little videos, the bunny, the bird, the birdhouse, but to sort of save time, let's just work the project in one movement. And the first thing is, let's cut out all of our bases for all of our little pieces. So I'm using a heat soluble pen, and I'm just tracing around my rabbit here, and then I can cut him out. So we need two because our little guy is going to be stitched together and stuffed. So we need two of the body. Now I did have an owl that I was going to also do, but I just haven't had a chance to create the pattern. And I thought, oh, this is enough. This is enough. So I've put him back in my little cupboard, and he will be next year. So if you were keen on an owl and you spotted him earlier in the series of Christmas as one of the items on my tray, and you really, really, really want to make an owl, you will find so many owls out there in the stitchery world that I'm sure you would find a pattern. And it's the same sort of principle. Even if it was an owl that you may already own that's an embroidery piece, there's no reason why you can't get that pattern. Let's say this was an embroidery piece of a rabbit, cut him out and create a template to make your owl 3D. So yeah, I'm sure you should be able to find an owl somewhere. So here's Charlotte's little bird, or Alfred if you choose to use one of the Alfreds. Gosh, the things you could do with that Alfred pattern. Very clever and just handy. It's a PDF file on Lisa's site, so you just download it, and I printed it and I took it to Officeworks and got them to put the binding on it, and it's just, yeah, it'll never be lost. I can always grab it then because it's just sitting in my bookcase. Okay, so here's our 2 bird bodies. Now there's no reason why you can't make these smaller or larger. It's just a case of shrinking them or increasing them on your printer, well, you can do it on a printer by pressing all the little buttons on the actual printer, or you can do it on your computer. Now this little guy, I ended up cutting 2 of it. Now I'm going to just extend it, if I remember rightly, to make his plumage look a little bit luxurious. I just extended that a little bit so that we had more feathers. If you think it's too big for your little bird, you can always just trim off the end of it. So it's not a big issue. But I just want that little bit extra. I'd rather have that now when we're cutting out than find that it's just not quite right. But when you sort of work through this project and start thinking about all the little animals that you could create for your Christmas tree, and you could certainly do up kits for kids so that they could make them and then they go on Grandma's Christmas tree. There's just so many potential ideas with it. Now I'm cutting out this little guy, and I'm just glancing, focus on what I'm doing here. I'm glancing over to my little bird, and I have a feeling I didn't use it. Let's have another look. Okay, so there's the piece that I just traced, that one. Oh yes, I did. There it is. That's it there. And then there's the second one of that one. Okay, so we'll cut one of those. We might cut 2. If we use it, we do. If we don't, it doesn't matter. I guess it all comes down to what plumage we add. So all your scrap bits of lace and embroidery bits, and yeah, I guess that's sort of how we'll see how it comes together. So there's our bird. And there's our rabbit sorted. He's great because he's only 1 piece, but 2. So let's get running Jackrabbit as well. Okay, I haven't even cut his pattern out. That's how organised am I. And I haven't done the wing. So let's finish bird first. Now, I did 4 of the wings. I believe in Charlotte's tutorial, she only did 2. Which I think Rachel did, was 2 wings. So but I'm going to do 4 because I want just that little bit extra structure. So you can see by the fabric here, I haven't used a lot, and I'm going to be getting quite a few characters out of all this. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the wing for our bird sorted. Now, what was I going to do next? We need this little guy. So let's just fussy cut him out. Now this fellow is a lot bigger than, oh no, he isn't. Look, that shows you just how much the pattern will creep in once we start stuffing it and stitching it. So So that fooled me. I thought that that had been shrunk down, but it hasn't, because I made these samples, oh goodness, I think probably August. And I thought when I get to the end of the year, I'm going to create my little birdhouse to add to my little collection of Etsy files, bunnies, hearts, scrappy flowers. There's all sorts in there now. And little birdhouse would be my new pattern. So I made a 3D version of these way back then. And did a whole Easter thing as well. Oh, I just love how some of these patterns you can just use all the time. Like if it's not Easter, it's not Christmas. You may just have someone with a birthday that loves rabbits. And they are... and you can make them something with a rabbit on them. Okay, here's my boy. Now let's get him traced. Let's see if I can tuck him in there. Now these pens, I've had a few ladies reach out to me and mention that they've used them and the ink has come back, it's crept back, which is really concerning because everyone's using them and we're all thinking they're great, and it's a bit of a concern that the ink may come back. So I don't know if they're starting to change the ingredients that this is happening or what, but I'm still going to proceed with the pens, but I'm just really mindful of how heavy I press. So maybe it's a case of the ink is really embedded into the fibers of the fabric. So the heat is just not getting deep enough to remove them. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I truly hope that it's not going to be a big problem, because I really feel for anyone that may use it, create a gorgeous piece and then put it under glass, as in frame it. And then 12 months later, you glance at your piece on the wall and there's the bloomin' pen. So heads up, ladies, just be aware that these friction pens might come back. So maybe get into the habit, you can't even see them on the screen here, but get into the habit of just using it very lightly, or at least come a little bit out from your template so you cut your rabbit out on the inside of the line. Okay, so that's bunny sorted. 2 bunnies and a bird. Now I'm just going to trim that off. And pop that in my little drawer. And then it's just a case of fussy cut out your rabbits and your bird. I might just trim that out into pieces. I won't waste all this time on doing all that. I'll just do the one, but you'll get the general gist of what I'm doing. Now, you could have folded this in half and traced the 2 of them out at once. So you'd have 2 pieces of felt, you whiz around the template and cut out 1 rabbit, which would give you 2 pieces because you're using the fabric on top of each other. That would be a smart thing to do, but this also works. We're going to then join all of these elements together with just a overcast stitch. So that bunnies and wings all become one. The only pieces that you're not going to overcast would be the tail feathers. Okay, I guess you could, if you wanted the look of that stitching on those pieces, you probably could. I don't think I will bother, because I think by the time I've stitched around all these, I'll be well and truly over cast stitch. And you need to remember to leave a little gap where you can poke in some stuffing. Now, you don't have to use stuffing. If you don't own stuffing, you don't need it. You can make your piece just flat and stitch it together. And because you've used 2 pieces of felt, it's going to have a little bit of rigidity to it. Now, my little pieces are going to have the stuffing. So, for example, this bunny, I would, oops, let's do his ear. I would stitch, put the second bunny underneath, so you got the 2 of them, and I would stitch all the way around, joining them together, and then just leave a little gap under his little tummy here where you can poke a little bit of stuffing in. So you might need a pen or a pencil so that you can sort of get a little bit of stuffing down into those parts. Now, looking at the one I made, there's the tiniest little bit in there. You can just see a little bulge. So it doesn't need to be a lot. It's just the tiniest amount. Even his head, there's not a lot of stuffing there. His body, his hips, that probably has double the stuffing that his little toes, his ear and head has. Okay, so something to consider when you're popping your stuffing in. You don't need a lot. Now, if you were doing the big rabbit, this guy, I think from memory, I left his back open. And what I did is when I was coming up here, I sort of scooted up to here over stitching, and I stopped, and then I had already stitched up through here. And while I was in this vicinity, I used my pencil and just poked a little bit of stuffing in his ears. Then I stitched it closed. So as you work around your piece, if you get to a little point that you're like, well, that's going to be hard to access from, say, there, while you're down here, just pop a little bit of stuffing in there and then carry on. So you don't have to just stitch all the way around, leave a gap and then stuff. Have a look at your little piece and maybe, you know, stuff a few of these little tricky spots before you get all the way around. So that'd be my hot tip with these little characters. Now the little bird, I think I just left his little tummy open, but that was pretty easy. Pop the stuffing into his little torso. Where's his body? See, that one's pretty easy. Maybe start with that one first and you'll get a feel for adding your stuffing or your wadding. I just use polyester stuffing. You can buy it at all good craft stores. If you can't access a craft store and you have a cushion insert that's got that same polyester stuffing or a pillow, you can certainly recycle some wadding from out of those. Now I'm going to cut the wings out and show you the overcast stitch. So that'll get you sort of started. And that's not too big of a project that will waste a lot of time. Then I need to get on to the little house. And we'll get that one started. Now the little house needs to be cut out on some cardstock to give it the structure we need, so that it holds its sides up, its roof up. It does get quite strong as we embellish it with bits and pieces. So let's first of all get this. Now, if you were to cut them together, they'd be, you know, spot on the same size, but you don't need to. Felt is quite, I'm just grabbing my needle and thread like usual. I'm very prepared. Not. Just normal cotton. Now, in one of these pieces I used cotton, and then I think the bird I used, I used a very fine embroidery thread, crochet cotton, which I might do. because that'd be rather sweet. I think the rabbits I used, oh no, that is, so it's up to you. If you have just cotton available, that will work. If you have some very fine crochet cotton, like this one here, which I'm using all the time, it's a number 8. Use that, but just use what you've got. Let's thread up a needle. Oh boy, I cannot get over how many needles I go through. My couch just seems to eat them. I know that sounds horrific, but my couch has, my chair, my part of my couch, the needles go down the side. They sort of fall onto my lap and then just flick down the side of me, and then they disappear. And the way this one is made, in the past I've been able just to retrieve them because I get a torch, get on my hands and knees, look in there and find my needle. But this bloomin' couch has a piece of fabric internally that stops me coming up from underneath and stops me coming down from the side. So they're gone. And I'm so tempted to turn. There's probably 7 needles in there now, 2 of which are my favourites. Just going to trim that just a little bit. And I might turn it so that that ink from that pen is on the inside. Why not? Just in case it decides to come back. No, I can't, because that then changes the shape of the wing. So, but that's all right. I'm sure it'll be okay. I've used it sparingly. Now I'm going to get my knot on the inside of my little pieces so that it's tucked away. I haven't put stuffing on the inside of my wings for my bird. It's just not needed, but I guess you could. Casper's just come in, so if you hear a cat meowing, he's come in to tell me all about his morning. Hello, Casper. He won't jump up. He's not agile. Not like Fudge. Fudge is like, oh, on everything. Casper is, put it this way, he has short legs and he's a little rotundurous. So Caspy is on the ground. If he has numerous chairs and landings and things that he can work his way up, he will. But then once he's up, he forgets that and he starts meowing because someone needs to get him down because he's a bit unsure. So he's a bit of a clown. So this is my overcast stitch. So this is going to be done to all of our elements with wadding added where necessary. So when we come back in the next video, you will have all of these pieces completed. What I might do is we'll save 5 minutes at the end of this video and I will come back with these pieces completed. So as you sit down to watch this, within this one video, you will see everything stitched. So take your time, enjoy the process. It's all about slow stitches. Now we're going to embellish with lace and trims and ribbons and flowers and bits and pieces, but you could embroider your own design onto this wing, for example. You could do all sorts on that wing for your little bird. Endless possibilities. It's so much fun. And these are seriously a very good project for kids. You might want to cut the pieces out and get it all set up, but there's no reason why a 10-year-old could sit here and slow stitch this wing together. Sometimes when the girls come over for dinner, we're sort of wanting something to do. I'll grab patterns like this and we just make a bird or make an owl, or, you know, just hang out and stitch and talk. So I'm coming around the other side now. So you get the general gist of how these little pieces come together. Now the other thing you need to consider, because they're Christmas decorations, you need to add in where your hanging ribbon is going to be. Now it can be added after the fact and stitched onto the back on the outside of your little bird or rabbit, but I would suggest that you stitch it within the seam as you're coming around doing this overcast stitch. Oh, I hope I've got enough left to finish this. Cut yourself a nice piece of cotton, because it's really good if you can get all the way around without having to change the thread and re-knot. And I'm just going to make it. And then I'm just going to pop a few stitches internally, like so, just scooting down between those layers until I just run out. That's not going to come out. So there's my little wing. How simple is that? So there you go. So overcast stitch right around. The crochet cotton's lovely because it's got a bit of a sheen to it. So now the little bird has a bit of a sheen, but you can use cotton. If you don't have access to that, say you're away on holidays and you want to do this little project with the kids, you could certainly just grab some sewing machine cotton. Okay, let's put that needle away. Now let's talk about the hanging points on these little guys. Where's my bird? Okay, the rabbit, there's a mark on my pattern where that can go. Now if you forget to add it, it doesn't matter, because you can see I've just stitched it to his back. Now the theory is that the mark should be in the right spot for the little rabbit to hang properly on your Christmas tree. But if you put a lot of weight, like the charm, the little rabbit will start to pull down. So this here might need to come further along than where my mark is. So I guess there's two options. You could stitch it in and hope it works, or leave this till the end and it tucks in where it best sits once you've embellished it, which I sort of think is the best idea, but it's up to you. If you're going to add charms or pieces of old jewelry or some treasures from out of your jewelry box, leave this off and add it at the end once you know how your little guy is hanging. If he's really dropping down, you might find that you need to support him more where his ear is. If he's not so much, you could come back up to his back. So just something to have a think about. If you're going to embellish with gems, beads and things like that, leave your little attachment point to the end. Now this little guy, the attachment point went on to here, and then I embellished it because that helped him hang properly. He didn't tilt forward or tilt back. So look, it's up to you, but I guess my tip is, if you're going to add weight, even buttons can adjust the way the little guy hangs on your Christmas tree. So just have a think about that. These have been hanging on a vase of sticks with some fake magnolia flowers as a bit of a decorative piece for months. So I've sort of got them hanging right so that they're not sort of tilting the wrong way. Now this little guy was the same scenario. He was all over the place. I just couldn't get him to sit right, and that ribbon was stitched inside the seam. So you can see it there. It's inside the seam. So I ended up adding this dangle to him after the fact, which helped counterweight him a little. So without that piece, if I what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this up in my hand to take the weight off of the piece. So at the moment he's hanging nicely with the weight coming down and he's on my finger dangling. The moment I lift that weight off, he slid up. See how the beak come up into the air to you? So let me take the weight off again and up he comes. So this is a scenario where I put the tie into the process of stitching around the perimeter. Then I went for it. I embellished and carried on like a pork chop, and this button and all of these trims and this big long tail pulled him up into the air with his little beak. So then using this little trim, pulled him back down and he found his position. So that's why when I made the bunnies, I left the trim off until I'd finished mucking around with it. And then I started to work out where exactly do I need to attach that hanging piece of ribbon so that my little piece hung correctly. Does that make sense? I'm sure it makes sense. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put these aside. I will come back at the end of the video and they'll all be cut out. They'll all be stitched, and I might leave one that's not closed and show you the wadding going in. So we will come back to that section of the video. Now let's talk about the little house. So what we need to do with this is cut it out. How are we going for time? We're not going to have enough time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save the little house for the next video. And in the meantime, I'm going to cut out the template so it's ready. And I'm going to trace it and cut it out again onto some cardstock. So when I come back, I can at least show you that. So the cardstock I'm using is not real heavy. It's just what I picked up at Spotlight. The cheapy shops sell it as well. And it's just a brown. I use it in the journals all the time. It's just brown card. So once I've cut that out, I will pop it onto the template onto the card and just draw around it and cut it out again. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do with the little birdhouse. So what I might do, we've got a little bit more time. We'll get to the 45-minute mark and I'll stop the video. I'll go away and prepare a few of these elements to some form of, stage to show you, and then in the next video we will start the embellishing, which is just the best bit, and that'll give me a chance to have a bit of a rummage through my scraps. Like this is my basket sitting here. There has to be something in that. I know there's little bits deep down in there, so I'm determined to just use what's in there, because they're all bits from projects through the year. So I just know that as I go looking, I will remember some of the stitcheries we've done. So it'd be nice to have those elements now on the Christmas tree. So when I look at the Christmas tree decorations, I'm hoping I will remember the projects. Now this template, if you do decide to make the birdhouse and pop over to my Etsy store and purchase it, I've added to it the dimensions everywhere. So let's say you want to make this house a little bit bigger and you wanted to add, say, 1/2 centimetre or 1 centimetre to it. You could use my measurements to actually enlarge your piece, especially if you didn't have the ability to enlarge it on your computer or on your printer. The measurements are there if you needed them. And this is the roof. Okay, real simple. it's just a case of tracing around my little template. In amongst my patterns, you'll see the heart and the flower. There's no reason why they could not be turned into decorations as well. Just cut 2 of them all, join them together. That gives them a little bit of stability, and then embellish. I'm not even on camera, but I think I've got the general shape. Yep. I'm going to use the edge of this card to help me. Okay, perfect. And now it's a case of use some better scissors than those. Cut the pieces out. Now I'm going to stop the video now and come back with some of these to-do homework tasks done. So there's the roof, ready to go. Really simple. And I've just got to cut that one out. Okay, guys, I'm going to pause the video and I will be back once I've sort of got some of these bits and pieces done, and I will see you all in a moment. Okay, I'm back. So what I have done is finished the big rabbit. He was pretty simple to stuff. I started here, stitched all the way around his ear, and then I put the stuffing in and then carried on the rest of the way. When I got to his mouth, I stopped and I back stuffed his little body. So he's got his stuffing in and he's been finished off. My tail feathers are ready to go. My wings are ready to go. They've been stitched. The little bird's body, really simple to stuff. It doesn't look like much at this stage, but trust me, it does evolve. So that was just a case of I started in the corner and I went all the way around, and then I got to about here and then pushed some stuffing inside. And little bunny, the jackrabbit, he's probably the hardest. I started here under the neck and did the ear around to that point and then stuffed his ear. Then I carried on back at this position and did the leg, then put some stuffing in. Then I carried on, did around to that point at the back of his leg, put some stuffing in there, and now I'm making my way across the top. So what I'm doing now is I've just popped a pin there to hold the stuffing in while I went on to those other pieces. So now I'm just going to finish off stitching this little guy together. I had another idea while I was doing my stitching. You could even do a running stitch along the inside edge all the way around, which would give you a completely different look again, which I thought would be rather sweet. I nearly did it on this and I thought, no, stick to the plan. You're changing your style of these little decorations. But I thought I'll suggest it anyway. If you're not a lover of this rustic overstitch look, a little running stitch right around the inside edge would be gorgeous to join these little pieces together. Have I got enough cotton here to finish this off? Oh, it's going to come close. So that's pretty much my elements created. So in the next video, we will start decorating the fun stuff. The basics are done. I haven't done any more with the birdhouse. I just cut it out. So there's our base. We will revisit that in another video. So just not to confuse you all, we will focus now just finishing off these little pieces. And yeah, getting our decorative elements onto their little bodies. So video number 1 in the series. Not sure how long this will go for, as long as it needs to, I guess. and I will run them one after each other so you can sort of get yourself organised and start your pieces if you choose to follow along. So I'm just burying the needle back into my work to knot it off, and that will hold. There we go. Done. So little jackrabbit is done. Little fat rabbit is done. Little bird is finished and his tail feathers are ready. So you sort of get the picture of how he'll go together. These little tail feathers will get snipped down to make them fluffy. They get stitched on. Then that one on there, and then if you want you can add these or not. It's entirely up to you, but it's all part of building his plumage on the back. So we'll play with that some more in the next video, but we're ready to go. So thanks for joining me, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.